Good evening, everyone. My name is Mandi. I am a journalist in Cape Town. This is On the Couch with Mandi. Today, we are talking all things education. They say education is the key to success, but what happens when you don't have access to that education? So we will be looking into the impact that these applications that we make online and you are now rejected, what happens to you as a child? What happens to you as a child? Do you continue or do you wait until you do get that space, or do you pursue other things? So we will be speaking to Western Cape Parliament member, that is Mohammed Khalid Said. And then we have our crime fighter, and also he has an organization in Kailicha which looks into males around the area. They deal with GBV, they deal with all kinds of things, including crime and education. That is Lumkile Sizila. And then we have Vanessa Discolefro. She is Vanessa Roux. She has her own organization where she's all about education, all about getting children into school. And then we have FAXA, Fight Against Crime. We have JJ, who will also be talking about the impact, and also the addition to crime, if a child does not go to school. So let's welcome all of them and let's give them time to introduce themselves. And also, Khalid, I know that you don't really have time, a lot of time with us. We've got about 30 minutes. So can you we'll start with you. Tell us what the impact is, and how many children were left, outside the school system in 2025, even 2024. We saw in 2021, children who were not enrolled in school, they ended up having an outside school that was in East Rifir. Can you just explain to us about this? I don't know whether to call it a phenomenon, but yeah, you can just start with us, Khalid.
Much Mandilaki, and my greetings to the fellow guests, many of whom, in fact, whom I've worked with as well, Vanessa in particular, on issues relating to driving justice in the education sector. I think this is a very, very topical issue, and it happens every year in the Western Cape without fail, where we have massive amounts of unplaced learners. Now, let me firstly say, Mandilake, that it's not only one issue that results in learners being unplaced. So you've got situations, number one, where the actual online system is just completely dysfunctional. Parents have applied to multiple schools. There are indeed places at the schools, but what happens is the department and the schools are just non-responsive. That's number one, and no proper oversight by the department. Number two, you have situations where there are indeed places at certain schools, but school governing bodies, many school governing bodies have been allowed to willy-nilly basically just reject learners with the help of the department, particularly the former Model C schools. And what then happens is those learners whose parents can probably afford to send them to schools in former or are known as former Model C schools, then have to be forced to go to already overcrowded schools in poor and working class communities. And that then results in many learners being unplaced and not being able to get into these schools. Then the other situation that we have, unfortunately, is the provincial government. And if you look at the proportion, there are more unplaced learners in grade 8 than what there are in primary school level. Because what the provincial government has failed to do is to build sufficient amount of high schools in the province, especially in the metro. There's a lack of high schools in proportion to the amount of primary schools. Not enough teachers as well. In fact, they're basically cutting teacher posts. So that's what we are facing. As a result of all of this compounds the issue of the unplaced learners. So it's a mixture of basically poor administration, lack of will to ensure that that learners are placed, but also a lack of planning on the side of the department. Now, these numbers of learners that have been unplaced are increasing every year. I don't have the exact figure, but currently, for the 20, there are still learners who are unplaced in the 2025 academic year. Learners who applied on time, and they always use the excuse of Eastern Cape and other provinces. It's not the case. You've got parents who have applied on time. Parents who apply for their children to be at schools in particular areas where they are staying at, simply rejected when they are indeed placed at some of these schools. So this situation persists non-stop. The only way in which we've been able, civil society goes to court and forces the department to place the learners in schools. And then even then, there is a lack of a catch-up plan. So what do? Well, what community has done, and we need to commend the community in Eerste Rivier, to actually go and find an unoccupied space which belonged to us and start the school. We need to stand together and do things like that. That then forces the department to then actually go and give those schools proper school status. That's one of the means. Also, learners must not just be satisfied, or parents must not just be satisfied to wait. We know, we've got civil society, we've got some of us who are inside of the legislature. It's our duty to put pressure on the department to place learners. So get together, work together as parents. If the issue persists that the child is still not placed, put pressure on us as public representatives. That's what we are paid for. And we can in turn then put pressure on the department. And because I can tell you from cases that we have dealt with, when we apply maximum pressure, when civil society and those who are holding political office, and when the media exposes these issues, when we all work together, we are at least to get learners placed, but not sufficiently. I think what needs to happen is legal action is important. We can take all these actions, but in the end of the day, there needs to be a greater sense of political will on the part of government to ensure that there's better planning in place, that the mechanisms at the level of the administration is improved. Just simple responsiveness needs to take place, because we think if we can get the basics right, then we'll be able to overcome this particular issue. Thank you very much.
Let's go to Vanessa. Vanessa, what is the problem? Why are children still unplaced? I mean, I'm sure there's a child now that applied for grade 8 in 2024 and they're still not in school.
Hi, Mandi, and good day to your listeners. And just to add to what Khalid has been saying, it's been a number of years that we've worked together, because we need to elevate the conversation to the legislature in order for them to be accountable. However, there is so many factors that's at play here. Inequality is at play. Racism is at play, and I don't care who say what. Racism is at play, because every year I say, just show me one white child that hasn't been placed. Then we will have a conversation. But at this point, inequalities, and I don't think parents realize the extent of the crisis that we are sitting in, because a country are being identified or rated by how they treat their elders, their health, and their children, the women and children. And our parents have become complicit, because how can you as a parent sit at home when your child should be in school in a community where we can't afford to have this? Because the unsavory characters, they know who's at home. This is the people, they know this child hasn't been to school for a week. This children becomes the target for teenage pregnancies, for gangsterism, and all of these things. And let me tell you, everything that the WCDE say, is spinning, especially the Eastern Cape thing. If we take in for instance the enrollment, the application process, these parents gets feedback in May already. Then the children from the Eastern Cape is still in the Eastern Cape. So how can that be like? How can it be the children from the Eastern Cape taking the spaces here? What they don't say is how many children from the Northern Cape are being bused to your Renish schools, all white children, because they don't say these type of things. And if you take the Bella Bill, the province that literally is against the Bella Bill is the Western Cape, because now it disrupt the normal status quo. You can go to Paul Roux, you can go to Renish, to Huguenot, all those schools in the winelands, those leafy schools. They are not being touched. How can you rate a country when your former Model C school, yes, the SGB does have the last say, but let's be honest, we are way too long in this game to believe that it's the SGB. The principal and the SMT, they are the people that really to take on these applications. They are the people that are keeping the status quo, because I can tell you, a SGB is not going to sit with 1,200 applications. And if we want to ask why this is happening, and principals will explain to you, this is the focus grades and the crisis grades is grade 1 and grade 8. Now it also becomes grade R because it's compulsory. Your grade R, when grade R was moved from DST to the DBE, it was chaos, total chaos, and ever since nothing has been resolved, because one, school doesn't have enough infrastructure to accommodate grade R children. Two, they don't assist community ECD centers to accommodate, because you need a properly trained grade R teacher in an ECD center. They're doing absolutely nothing. But in my opinion, they are designing farm laborers. They are designing factory workers, because what our people don't understand is that the DBE is only responsible up to the age of 15 years old for a child. After that, you are left for your own devices. It's not in our culture. And we are feeding into, we don't know when these policies are being made. We don't know when they decide these things, because in our culture, a child of 15 years is still a baby. And we nurture our children for as long as we possibly can. But now we leave this up to our government to decide when our children is big enough. And that is why we are faced with youth unemployment. We are faced with all these social ills, because we allow government to do these things to our children. And they have no concern. I've just, last week I read the statement from Ronald Hammond. 44,000 parents have received more than one space. That's what they say. But I can tell you it's a lie, and that lie we will see play out in January, when parents are standing in long queues at district offices that basically just states their name. When are we going? I don't toy anymore, because then I disregard the constitution that gives my child and any child the right to have the right to basic education. It's a waste of time. It's political play, and I don't feed into political play, because then I'm not serious about education in this country or the dreams that we have for our children. So that toy and those political leaders, I can tell you, Mandi, if there's one political leader that I can say, listen, this issue needs to be raised in the legislature, it is Khalid Sayed. But all these other people, they don't care. All these other political parties that our people vote for, they don't care. They want to make a noise, and they know exactly what needs to be done. They know we need to fundraise so that we can get proper lawyers and challenge the law if we are serious about education in this country for our children. But they are not serious. They are gladly taking the paycheck on behalf of your children. They don't care if they die. They don't care if your child is in a school. And they don't even care if your child is in a class where there's 70 children in a grade one class, in a foundation class. What do we expect from teachers?
Okay. JJ.
Yeah.
So Vanessa said something that so all these characters, they know that so and so is not placed at whatever school, and this is a grade 8 learner that we're talking about, or someone that should be in grade 8. And what happens to them? I mean, what happens in terms of, would they not be easily recruited into gangsterism? She also mentioned teenage pregnancy. Are they not targeted then if they are always at home without anything to do?
Yeah, look, hearing what they got to say, I don't know if you can hear me. Good evening to all of you. Hearing all of these things, right, and hearing about how the education system is basically failing, um, it causes a major issue. So I'm gonna say something that's maybe a little unpopular, right? So I have an unpopular opinion, but I think that a lot of what happens with recruitment amongst youths, it all starts at home, all right? So let me just take you back. I had a conversation with a SAPS member a while back, and in the conversation, I mentioned, I said that, something, SAPS is the first line of defense, and, it was a conversation around gangsterism and dealing with a specific issue. And yeah, so nonetheless, I said, you know what, you're the first line of defense, blah, blah, blah. And then thereafter, after leaving that meeting, I then realized, what, that is actually incorrect. SAPS is actually not the first line of defense. Your first line of defense is your home. All right. Your second line of defense is your schooling and your education. Your third line of defense, I'm talking now in combating gangsterism and crime. Your third line of defense would be education. And then your last line of defense would be the police, because it shouldn't be something that kids know better than cartoons. Do you understand what I mean? They know SAPS officers, they know SAPS vehicles. These are the first things that they learn, as opposed to, things that are supposed to be educational and so forth. They don't look at SAPS officers or policing or so forth as role models. They look at them as the opposition. And there's a fundamental problem there. Do you understand? So, kids not being placed in school and that, I think is maybe 50% of the problem. Like I said, I'm going to say things that's very unpopular. I think kids not being placed in school is maybe 50% of the problem. The other 50% of the problem is that while they're in school, what are they being taught in order to, resist against gangsterism? What are they being taught in order to resist against the temptation, to find these gangsters as role models? I give you one example, all right? One of our members, she's got a child in one of the schools that is now so-called red zones. And she was talking about the protocol that when the shooting happens, that these kids need to, lay on the floor and hide behind tables and so forth. And she said something interesting, and she said, but, instead of the children learning 1 + 1 = 2, they're learning how to survive. Do you understand? So therein lies the problem. And then as these children then grow up, because they have a lack of, stable role models, because their parents, unfortunately, are drug addicts or gang members or what have you, you will then find that one or the other, children as young as 9 or 10 are being recruited into little gangs, or they're forming their own little gangs to throw stones and stab each other and all these things. And then obviously later on in life, they go on to join gangs. And then this also contributes to the high dropouts as well, because what then happens is that a lot of people don't talk about is that they say, oh no, the kids drop out because of X, Y, and Z. But there's an element there that, that these kids are actually dropping out because the same classmates that they grow up with, once they get into high school, they then belong to separate gangs or different gangs. Now I can't go to school with this guy because he's now an American, or he's a HR, or he's this and that. Because chances are, if we're gonna sit in the same class together, we're gonna stab each other. Because that is just how it is. So yeah, I think that, there's your other guests have explained that there's so much challenges in the education department, especially in the Western Cape, that it feels almost advanced. It almost feels like you're putting the cart before the horse by asking and saying, you know what, maybe we should introduce a curriculum that is specific to these schools, programs that are specific to the schools that are in red zones, anti-gangsterism, how can I say, programs, anti-gangsterism, teachings, where people with your police officers come and say, look, this is what the outcome of this is. This is what the outcome of that is. We've got former gang members that come to school and say, look here, don't become a gang member because of this. Don't become a gang member because of that. But you have these specific programs that deal with this, especially teenage pregnancy as well. We frown upon certain departments coming to our schools and giving our children condoms and condoms and birth controls and stuff like that. But this is the reality of it, though, isn't it? That our children need to be protected against these things. That is just the unfortunate reality. But look, in terms of how schooling affects gangsterism and how schooling affects children specifically, is that it's a person that runs around in circles when you talk about these things. But like I said, a lot of these things started out because, if I may, just give me one minute to just make an example. All right. So I went to high school, and in the high school we've had other pupils that were gang members. All right. And I can give you two particular examples. On the one hand, the one pupil who was a gang member, he he came from a background where his parents didn't really care about him. Do you understand? His parents didn't care about him. His father was in drugs. His mother just, she was left to their own devices, didn't really worry about the child, and because of his surroundings and because of the environment that he was in, he was drawn into this. He was openly a gang member on school, all right, coming in and saying, I'm this, I'm that. And then on the other hand, again, you've got who is now come like his opposition, who was also drawn into his environment, but his mother cared deeply for him. And so, like, one of the classes that we had, they would be in the same class, and in one of the subjects there would be a specific teacher that would, go the extra mile for the students, man. So if you're coming to my class, you have to wear your tie, you have to tuck in your shirt, your shoes needs to be polished, and but if they go to a different class again, then that is not the case. Then they just, are misbehaving and so forth. Now, what the teacher then used to do is that with these two particular ones was that she would then, if she doesn't come right with him, she would send them to the principal. If that doesn't work, she would then call in the parents. Now, remember I said that one of them has got an issue with where the parents do not care about him, and then you've got another one where a parent does and makes time for the child and so forth. Because of the intervention of the parents on these children's lives or these pupils' lives, it made a huge difference. Now, the one who had an active role player in his life, an active role player as a parent, or was an active parent and so forth, he went on to become a truck driver. And the other one, unfortunately, in jail today. So this is the example that I'm making to say that, when we say that SAPS is maybe the first line, it's not. The first line of defense against gangsterism and the first line of defense in breaking the cycle would be to start at home. From home, it's education. From education, it's jobs, and employment, and so forth. And so that is how you would then break the cycle. But yeah, look, honestly speaking, I can't speak on how the education system is and so forth, because the things that I would like to talk about, like I said, it's almost like putting the cart before the horse and saying, like, look, there has to be direct intervention, but how can we intervene when there's no education system in the first place? So yeah, that's my view on it.
if we're all here, it's a pity the PS is not here. If we're all here, I also wanted us, which we can do the other day, including councils, if we can research PEC members and just assess the state of the PEC.
Mandi, you are muted.
So I'm so sorry, guys. I am so sorry. It says that Mitchell's Plain has 47 primary schools and 18 high schools. Make it make sense. How is this possible, Khalid? Are you there? Is he there? Okay, Vanessa, would you like to take this one?
Yes, Mandi. And the thing is,
I'm here.
what is worsening at this point is that the Western Cape is the only province that that have collaboration schools, which are run by trust from Stellenbosch. People can go and look at it, and this is happening in our communities, and this is taking the power from our communities, where they have a say like SGP. You wouldn't believe how many labor laws are being violated in these type of schools. But what happens is they introduce these schools to the community with all the new technology, and our people are going for the flashy and the iPads and stuff, not knowing what exactly they are doing. Secondly, I want to disagree with JJ that the home is the first line of defense. If I'm saying to you, a child from grade 8 is at risk for teenage pregnancy, that means that child herself is a child. That means she herself needs some guidance and parenting. And I have numerous engagements with SEPs, because what SEPs does is they pass their responsibility to the WCED, which is doing absolutely nothing to protect other learners or to protect teachers in the process. There's one thing when a child is naughty, and there's a total different thing when it's criminality. So we shouldn't save SAPs, because I have been recently in such a dangerous situation where the station commander was at Idel Road, full police protection, law enforcement. While we were sitting in the meeting, a child was almost stabbed to death. He was stabbed so many times on the school grounds. And I was begging and pleading, can you please take this child to the day hospital that's down the road? SEPs couldn't take that child because the ambulance couldn't get into the area. That child would have died if that child wasn't put on a bakkie to take to school. So no, we shouldn't pass the buck, because at the end of the day, no parent wants to see their child at home. The responsibility is on the department to give education to these children. So no, Mr. JJ, I disagree. I strongly disagree, because no parent would want their child at home. They want to get their child to school. What do we do if we don't have a school to give that child to? So the first people that needs to take responsibility for these children are not the parents, because parents do everything they should do. At this point, I can tell you, you won't even know the extent of the crisis if you are saying the home is the first line of defense. Because all these children, all these parents have applied on time. There's no schools for them, so what must they do at this point? How can you then say that the home is the first line of defense? If there's criminality at school, it's the responsibility of SAPS and the NPA and the DPP to prosecute these children and keep the other children safe, because we have a bigger duty to keep parents safe, children safe. We have a bigger duty to keep teachers safe. We are already losing teachers to other countries. We are already losing teachers, and we must be done with these programs. This is nonsensical. This is nonsensical and it's a waste of time and money. We should start building schools and we should start getting things right. That's what it is, not programs. We are tired of programs. We are tired of meetings. Where's the schools that they should build so that these children can go into classes where we sit with about, because the ratio is 35. What do we expect from a teacher that must teach 70 children? So it doesn't make sense that you say the home is the first line of defense, because at this point I'm inundated with children that's not placed, and these parents can show me they've applied on time. They did everything that they were supposed to do. How on?
Vanessa, I
Yes.
just want to ask a question from Khalid. Khalid, are you still with us? Khalid did say that he really needs to leave. Okay, here's another question that someone asked. Why are children who live far away being prioritized over those who live within walking distance of a school? And what is being done to fix this injustice? And also, how can schools give quality education when there are 40 to 50 learners in a class with one teacher? Yeah. So what is being done about overcrowding? So it's two questions, Vanessa. One question is looking into learners who don't live within the 10 kilometer, what is it, 10 kilometer or 5 kilometer radius?
5 kilometer radius.
Yeah.
So and that's also what I want to add to JJ. What we don't understand, and that's why I'm saying this is designed, we must start thinking out of the box. We must ask ourselves critical questions and ask, why is this happening? Because what they are doing, we are faced with poverty, we are faced with unemployment. When the policy was still in place that the child is going to the school nearest to where he stay, we didn't really have this problem. Now they will put a child from Mitchell's Plain in that new school in Botasig or Panorama with unemployed parents. So they make sure that their child won't be able to get to school every day. However,
Vanessa,
yes.
Vanessa, I'm so sorry. I'd like to get some response from Muhammad before he leaves.
Okay.
Khalid, can you just quickly tell us what your view is about children coming from outside the 5 kilometer radius into those schools, leaving the children that live closer to the school without any placement?
Look, I think let me respond on that, and then I need to really leave because my meeting has started.
Okay.
Look, I think in that regard, again, it speaks to the lack of planning by the department. Parents cannot be blamed, and the children should not be victimized. The language that we put out there to say, no, these children can't come here. The Western Cape and Cape Town does not have borders between areas. And the department does in any case not consistently apply these issues of the radius. I dealt with a case of a parent who wanted to send the child to Groote High School. They live a few meters away from Groote High School. They were not the right color. They were told to send the child the department said they must send the child to Bonteville. But there were learners from the northern suburbs going into that school. So it's not even applied consistently. So the issue about the area and the space, it is another reintroduction of apartheid spatial planning. But more importantly, if you want to stick to the issue of area for the sake of, especially in our poor and working class communities, around transport matters, then the department and government needs to build sufficient amount of schools catering for population in particular areas. And they've got those figures. Those figures they get years in advance in terms of projections. So there is no excuse, Mandilake. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Khalid. If you've just joined us, you're on the couch with Mandi, and that was the ANC's leader in the province, Muhammad Khalid's side. He unfortunately has to go. He's got other engagements. So we are with Vanessa Leroux, JJ from Fight Against Crime, And we've got Lumkile, who is yet to speak, by the way. He is in Makaza. He is from Amadoda, Aqotho. So we are looking into everything that is education. We're looking at education in terms of kids who are not yet placed due to whatever reasons. And Vanessa, you were still telling us about this problem where a child is placed very far from their home.
Yes, and what parents don't realize is in the Schools Act, you if you place a child, you must make sure that that child have access to the school where you place. Whenever the department send a child 20 kilometers away from where he's staying, they must provide learner transport. And that is what our people don't demand. The second thing is the Western Cape in particular is they are popular for their divide and rule. So what they are doing is they divide poor people in terms of race, because now they're placing a child from Khayelitsha, and we know that race exists, and this is something that's truly bothering me, because both all of us as people of color are oppressed. We don't have borders anymore where we say, oh, people from Khayelitsha stays in Khayelitsha, people from Mitchell's Plain can only stay in Mitchell's Plain. No, what they are doing, these people don't ask to be there because I want my child as close as possible to home. But now they place children from the township like Cooks and Khayelitsha in Mitchell's Plain. Now the fight gets diverted from why is this children here and our children don't get space. That's the divide and rule that is happening amongst poor people, and this is what they create. They don't apply the policy where you stay anymore because more middle class. They create a few middle class people for near these leafy schools. However, even just last night, I was speaking to a parent. She's staying 2 kilometers from the school, and her child wasn't placed in the school because the child wasn't the right color. It wasn't a white child. And this is the things that is happening. They don't want to take responsibility for that policy because then they must overcrowd. Then they must overcrowd because more middle class people that can afford to pay those fees. And it's extremely worrying. You wouldn't believe how many children, how many parents are forcing their way into these former Model C schools. And they won't take them. They won't take them. And we must go into the belly of the beast to see what's happening. My child was at the former Model C school. However, when he was there, that policy still applied, and I was staying in the road of the school. And we must really, the inequality is the most dangerous thing, because how can you sit in a former Model C school with 24 children in one class, and then you say in the township school they are up to 70. Whoever is still talking about 50 haven't been to school or in schools for a very, very long time. The other thing that is most disturbing, our children doesn't have the freedom, because, and this is where SGBs comes in. They blame SGBs for certain things. However, our community also don't hold SGBs accountable, because our children doesn't have space to breathe anymore. I call it squatter schools. They put up all these mobile classes. There's no space to breathe. There's no space to play and just be children. But also, this is where most of the criminal activities are taking place. And we as a community allow these things to happen. What frustrates me is when I'm talking to my community and say this is what is happening, they would rather come and an official will come and say, oh no, this is not what is happening. This is the most frustrating thing, just for them to find out a month later. These people have no issue of lying to the community. And that is the problem.
Lumkile, are you with us? I just want to find out how much of a problem is this in Kailicha, where you are staying, where you find that children from outside the area, whether from Fuleni or from Delft, they are bussed into Makaza, and the children in Makaza don't have places in school because it's oversubscribed. Do you have a problem like that, and what is the impact of that?
Yeah, hi Mandi and everyone. Yes, Mandi, Kylie also have that a problem, and I like Vanessa what I was saying because the challenge here is really the challenge because there's a few transport I saw the special kids and transport from Kylie from I don't know if from Michel's Plain or from another area, but I think the failure is a poor planning, poor management, and the system, the registration system process is failing us because some of the people are moving from Makaza is walking to Kailich or to Site B. And the challenge, because if the impact of those things, you look, if you come and visit Kailicha, early in the morning, all those, most of the schools, you see that the kids is standing outside the gate because they wake up earlier, and but it's the walking distance is too far. You see, now the results they might be late on and standing outside the gate, and maybe an hour before they open the gates. And there's no solution if you close the gate for the kids outside. Then you act as a punishment. There's no punishment like that for those kids. They don't get more information in terms of education because you punish, but they not understanding the subject. They not following the subject because that teacher is done. They go to second period. That means they are failing. So that challenge of the distance and also the serious problem is poor planning, poor management, and the system. The registration process is frustrating a lot of people. If you come to or visit one of the schools in Kailchal, you see the registration process in the school. You see the people are complaining. A Department of Health in town is a mess. People are complaining about those processes, and people are tired about those things. But there's no way that people are going to school, and also that impact of the closing the boys or the girls or the kids, the learners outside the schools. Some of the learners they after the year, these are drop out because they are not understanding all the subjects. They end of the year they fail the grade, so they need to repeat the grade. Most of them is not want to back to school. Then you have the lot of unemployment children, and they doing to start the crime because they're not carried on by education. Yeah.
I wanted to ask about children, like you say, grade eight learners, because I think the problem here is grade R, grade one, and also grade eight. So we let's look at the grade because grade R and grade one, it is a huge problem, you know.
Yes.
But grade eight, they are now teenagers. They're like 13, 14 in grade eight.
Yes.
So now, how many of these kids end up dropping out of school entirely because they don't get into school? I know someone who was kept from school in grade eight because I mean he was not at school in grade eight because they couldn't find school for him, and the following year it was also the same situation. So what do you do in those cases? How do you, as your organization, do you ever deal with such cases, and what do you do? How do you encourage a child who doesn't know what to do because there's no school for him?
Yeah, this year we have two complaints about the parents. They not the child not getting the schools, and we as a organization in Usango, we decide to take that case, and we meet the school principal, and we force the school principal, if this young girl is not going to school, what can we do with that girl? Yesterday it is sitting on the community, but there's the schools next to that. That school also that school is far. I think is more than 100 kilos. But we managed to convince that principal to take that kids to that school. And what they complain about a lot of forms and the ID, the documents, and then no, the kids not is not not their fault. Can you take it and then we follow all the documents and we agree that the principal and sit down and then we manage that principal to take that kids. And another school also we do that kids came from Eastern Cape. He's struggling to organize the school board. They attend the school this year. No, not this year, another year. Then they moved to Eastern Cape, came back again. And we'd go and convince those teachers because first we engage with school governing board. We know those school governing board. We engage the school governing board about the process board. This one they need the school, and also this young woman is staying with the grandmother. The grandmother is not understanding those processes, and the grandmother is going to the schools, and then maybe those secretaries they chase out. Can you come again tomorrow? Who's going up and down? And then we take it in that case and we follow that case and then we assist that grandmother because there's the grandmother who's carrying those people and can oversee those children at home. Because that grandmother, at least if the children is went to the school and then they feel comfortable because they are safe that in the school. But we in those cases we have a lot of cases, but so far we managed to tackle those two cases because there are different cases. Also not only only those schools and on the tertiary level, those young girls, those girls or boys or learners, they apply long time ago, but they're not getting the schools. Or someone that get the school from this day here in Western Cape, the school is Limpopo. What can we move in Limpopo? There's no one in Limpopo, so it's difficult. But in terms of the grade R is difficult. And some of the schools, the grade R teachers is not understanding exactly terms of the education. Their next school is next to me is excellent. A lot of people are bringing the schools here, and is really teaching. And those young kids, they come back to the homeworks from grade R homeworks, Africans homework. You know, with my township, people don't understand those things, but the communities, they need to go, those people understand the Africans to assist in terms of to submit the homework. You know, some of the grade R, you visit the grade R, you see the kids are sleeping, and there's no proper teaching. We need, I don't want the teachers to be a nanny. You want the grade R, because the grade R for me is very important. Because if you teach the kids from grade R, like China. They teaching everything from grade R. Example, if there's a toys, the toys maybe is building the house, is connecting the cars, all those are toys. Not just people are sleeping and just teddy bears. They're doing something but heavily. Why some of the countries are good in terms of developing things, because we're studying the grade R, giving the blocks, like small blocks, by how to build the house. Then they build that by blocks. How to build a car. That is a grade R process. Need to our kids to understand how to do something practically, not just the theory. Because our government, they like to focus on grade 12. And then if grade 12, that means it was good. But mine, I prefer those grade R, grade 1 in terms of to the studying grade 8. Yeah.
JJ, are you still with us?
Still, yeah.
Okay, so how do we then assist our learners? I mean, Lumkile said something about, grandmothers not being able to use the system. I'm thinking now maybe FAXA should have an education desk, to assist also, because like it or not, you are now an organization that is within our communities. So how do we then assist, communities going back to school? Going back to education is the key to success. How do we make sure that our children are now getting that education?
Well, I think that responsibility is not something that falls on civil society. I think that falls on the Department of Education, right? So what he said was absolutely correct. That the onboarding process to get your child into school and so forth, it is really complicated. And if you do make it through, you face several issues, either technical issues or the fact that they accepted the child in, but they got no space, and. So I think that responsibility squarely falls on the education department. Second thing that I actually want to also agree with is that, let's say we get our children into these schools and so forth. I want to agree with Lumkile that a lot of the subjects and stuff like that is not practical in terms of how can I say, in real world experience. You know, he said something about teaching children about mechanics, teaching children about all these things. You know what I'm trying to say. So there has to be certain curriculums that is introduced, or certain subjects that's introduced that is practical in real world use. You understand? Because what are the chances that children will choose? What are the chances that children will even get jobs taking certain subjects and so forth? So we need mechanics, we need plumbers, we need electricians, we need all these things that is employable, down the line. So that also does need to come into play, certain subjects and so forth. So this goes into my previous statement that I made, where I said certain programs need to be introduced into certain schools and so forth, especially on the Cape Flats or in so-called red zones, because you can't just send your child to a school and then hope for the best. It's never going to happen. And when I say that homes are a first line of defense, I say that, maybe let me clarify, and like I said, it might be an unpopular opinion. Let me clarify. When I say the homes is a first line of defense, I mean that in the sense of that you need to play an active role in your child's education. It just doesn't stop at when you drop your child at 8 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning, and they begin again when you pick them up at 2 or 3. You understand? You need to play an active role. And Vanessa herself said that, community members and parents and so forth should hold SGBs accountable. I mean, that is playing an active role. That is a defense that you can utilize by, engaging with schools and saying, look, I'm having a problem. For example, now I'm having a problem with getting my child into this grade. I'm having a problem getting my child into this school. And I will agree with the other panelists by saying that the schools do need to be, children do need to go into schools that are within the area. But then you face a problem where something like they've said, that you've got children in other areas coming into the schools and so forth. But then once again, that responsibility goes back to the education department, because it's within their mandate to not only build schools but maintain them. So if you do have a situation where, Windsor, how often do you see new schools being built in, so-called red zones? How often do you see schools being improved? That's the most important thing. While we still have the schools, how often are they improved upon? How often are they maintained? How often, and? Yes, I mean, it falls on the SGB. You've got all these technicalities around it, but the onus is upon the education departments to ensure that there's a certain standard of a certain standard that the school needs to meet in order for quality education to give. That also applies into the certain ratio, because if you build more schools, organically you will have a ratio of schools going up, decreasing. But yeah, look, the thing is, our view on what role education plays might be different to everybody else's, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I do agree with you. There has to be some sort of, we did try and sort of play around with the education desk. This is due to the school bullying and so forth that happens in the school. You may or may not know, a couple of months ago, there was a story that went around where a child may or may have not committed suicide due to school bullying. But now, what interventions
Don't say that word. Sorry, please don't say that word. They might kick you out.
Oh, sorry, my bad. Yeah, so what interventions was there from the schooling side, for example, to prevent that from happening? You understand? So, yes, so I do agree. More schools need to be built. I also concur that it falls squarely on the Department of Education to make the process simpler. It is simply just too complicated to get your child into school, and the processes they have. I mean, there was even a school that I went to assist with getting a child in, and they've got this issue with systems of life. But I think that's a universal thing with our government, isn't it? But anyway, that is my view on it.
Okay. We'll take one more round for questions, and then after that we'll just have like your closing remarks. Let me just see here. Most schools, I think this is just a comment. Most schools are for sport, academic, than education. Guys, can we just have questions and can we stick to the topic? The topic is not about bullying. The topic is about placements, the online thing. And also, we've also spoken about being placed away from your own home. And yeah, let me just see. There was a question that I was given here. Okay, fine. This is not about how do you support learners. Okay, fine. No, I don't see any questions, so I'm just gonna get oh, someone is asking here, Vanessa. There's a question here. Maybe you might be able to answer this, Vanessa.
Yes.
There's a question here that says, do we have the same problem with technical schools? And then okay, yeah. Do we have the same problem with technical schools?
Definitely, Mandi. Because first of all, I think we must define dropouts, because these children are not dropouts. The education department don't give them the education that they should have, that which is their constitutional right. So we must define dropouts, because no one keeps their child or willingly let their child stay at home. And even in September last year, I attended a meeting where the DBE official was there, and it was at Equal Education. And they wanted to portray as if everything is hunky-dory. And I said, wait. Do you know that it's September month? Just next to this place where we're sitting in Goods, in Mitchell's Plain, at this point, 1,009 children haven't attended school for the whole academic year. Are we saying they are dropouts? No, there's no schools for them. The other thing that we are sitting with is that the reality is they don't build special needs school. And that's where the criminality comes in. That's where the ill discipline comes in. Because now mainstream teachers that are not trained to deal with these type of things, they are forced to teach these type of children, that your ADHD children, that type of thing. What the department continuously saying is, oh, they will send the support. I must still see the support. Even technical schools. Do you know how long these waiting lists are? And if a child reaches the age of 15, then there's no way that child gets into a technical school or a school of skills or a special needs school. So these children are being on a waiting list for years and years to come. And obviously, they will fall on the wayside because these schools are not being built. If you ask me what our biggest problem is, there's children in mainstream schools that we expect a teacher to teach that hasn't been qualified to deal with these type of things. Just today, I was dealing with the issue of an ADHD child that has been stabbed because the mainstream teacher doesn't understand ADHD and how to deal with it because they are not trained to do that. That's where the discipline problem comes in. And even in terms of application, this thing, parents apply to up to 10 schools and all of them are oversubscribed. How do we get to that point? But the department is telling me 44,000 parents have more than one, has been accepted at more than one school. So then it means this thing doesn't work. We must also realize in our culture, we have parents, we have grandmothers and grandfathers that's looking after children. They not tech savvy. They don't know how to do these applications. They rarely go to the mall because that's what they do. They do these pop up things in the mall where parents can go to. The department makes it easy for them and not necessarily they really want to assist these people in applying on time and giving education. In fact, I think they hope these people don't get to the technology, that these grandmothers and grandfathers don't get to the technology so that they don't have to deal with these issues.
Okay, so can we have your last remarks, JJ?
So, I don't know where that sound is coming from, but anyway, yeah. Look, so my last remarks would be simply just first and foremost, the Department of Education needs to make processing and accepting children much more simpler. It's just way too complicated. Secondly, they do need to build more schools, especially in red zones, and maintain the ones that they currently have. And my view is that there needs to be specific programs that are dealt with in these schools that are, how can I say, that relates to the environment that these children come from. And then finally would be to introduce a curriculum of a curriculum that would be more practical, because I mean, the thing is, yes, we would like more scientists and doctors and stuff like that, but at the same time, we do need builders, we do need plumbers, we do need electricians, we do need mechanics, we do need all of these things. These are things that are employable, because what you are doing is that by not offering these things, is that you are creating an environment where a generation becomes unemployable, and then you're contributing to the unemployment rate. Yeah, so it will be basically just that, because look, at the end of the day, it's like Vanessa says, and I agree with her, a lot of the responsibility does fall within the Department of Education to ensure that the certain standards are met, but at the same time and in the same breath, it does fall within the parents' interest to ensure that schools are held accountable, especially the SGPs. It does fall within the parents' interest to ensure that their children get a quality education by attending parent-teacher meetings and so forth, to understand what is going on, and to speak to the children and say, look, how is school today? And when a child says, for example, my window is broken and I sat next to my window and it was cold, the onus is on that parent to phone the school and say, but you know what, but the glass is broken, can you fix it? I'm just making a small example on little things that parents can do to play an active role in their education. Just so finally, in terms of the standard of education, all right, I do think that more needs to be done in terms of our standard of education. There was this thing about a 30% where children needed only 30% to pass, and so forth. Yeah, the real world doesn't accept that. You understand? And I think more needs to be done. The standards needs to increase, and with the standards, so too does the work ethic needs to increase, so that we can have a generation of employable children, or a generation of employable people. Because at the moment our education system is failing us. At the moment our education is just not cutting it. But anyway, that's my my take on it.
Thank you, JJ. Lumkile, what are your final remarks?
Just only three, because some of the community already mentioned. First, we need a vibrant and active school governing body. One. Two, we need community education. The Department of Education need to go to educate the communities. And thirdly, we need just, I'm serious term of curriculum, because if, example, one day I visit on 2004 in Tanmek, if they're starting from the grades are grade 1, grade 2, and those kids understanding and the future people, because now the learners, they just attending the school for passing, and not understanding why. Example, if my son they want to be a doctor, what the subjects can you follow? If my son they want to be engineering, what can we do? If my son they like to the art, need to be starting on the grade one. Those are practical things. Example, I'm visiting one is a school in Denmark. I saw in the primary school there are drums, there's a computer literacy, there's a mural painting. There are different things, but I feel understand on the primary school those kids is understanding and practice and doing those things and on the young age. Now in South Africa are starting those practical things. Our kids was excellent in terms of high school, both they learn the computer literacy on the primary, understanding everything about those things. Yeah, if government can change the way they are doing things, this way, this system is old one. There's a government as apartheid system. You need to change because there are a lot of unemployment youth outside. People that went to university, but they came back because they don't have uh, 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 um, skills, and also those company they need experience. They want experience, and also they want they don't want theory. They want practical. Our community does not understand in terms of there's no college as such. If there's a college, and also train those people from younger age to understand those things. Thanks.
Thank you, Lumkile. Vanessa?
Mandi, I saw there was, sorry, just to get in there. I saw there was a question for me where one of the parents asked why they don't build autism schools. What we must remember, autism is one of the spectrums that falls under special needs schools. So we need to ask why they don't build special needs schools anymore, because that's the reality of it all. Because autism is one spectrum. There's ADHD. There's all of these type of things that children need for special care. So autism is just one section of special needs schools that needs to be built. And if you ask, and there's another question, what needs to be done? When your child is not in a school, we as the community must realize we are part of the oppressed. We must look beyond color, beyond creed, beyond background. My child is not in a school, and because my child is not in a school, we need to stand up. We need to stand together, and we must stop giving these politicians a platform to talk nonsense and do absolutely nothing. Because education is so important. That is our only tool out of where we are. So if we still looking at this day and age, at your background, at your race, at whatever, at the end of the day, these are all children that have a constitutional right to have the right to basic education. And that is what we must stand together for. That is what we must stand up for. And we must be willing to sacrifice a week out of work just to make sure that our children gets into a school.
All right. Okay, so thank you so much to my guests for joining me, and hopefully we'll have them again. JJ, Lungile, this is the second time that you've come to the show, so hopefully you will still come back to us. It's like you're part of the family now, you're part of the couch. And also, Vanessa, I hope this is also not the last time that we have you on the show. We will try to have the department also join us, but that is something that we will talk about offline. But thank you very much for joining me. And it's always a pleasure to talk to all of you because I do very often. So thank you so, so much for joining me. And that is what's on the couch today. And join us next week at 7 p.m.
Thanks for having us, Mandi. Keep well. Thanks to the guests.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
All right. Good night.